My name is Emma Carter, and I was 28 years old when my own brother tried to destroy me at my wedding. I saw him do it. Not in a dream, not in some paranoid flash of fear, but clearly with my own eyes. His hand moved over my champagne glass, quick and practiced, like he had rehearsed it in his head 100 times. A tiny packet disappeared into the bubbles. He looked around, smiled at the guests, and stepped away as if he had only adjusted a napkin. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse him. I didn't even let my face change. I simply reached for the glass, waited until he turned his back, and switched it with his. Then I lifted a plain glass of water when everyone raised their champagne. He took the poisoned toast meant for me, brought it to his lips, and smiled like he had already won. "Congrats, little sister," he said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "My surprise is coming soon." Exactly 30 minutes later, his hand started shaking around the microphone. The big projector behind him flickered on by itself, showing a folder labeled "The Truth About the Bride." Everyone laughed at first, thinking it was some cute wedding video. Then my brother's face went gray. He tried to stop the screen, but his legs wobbled. His smile cracked, and the room went silent. That was when I realized the drink was only the beginning. Before I tell you what he said, and what happened after I walked out, tell me, what time is it for you right now? Where are you watching from? And what's the weather like there? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. 30 minutes before the projector exposed the first crack in my family, I was still trying to convince myself my wedding could survive the night. My brother's name was Ryan Carter, and for most of my life, he had been treated like the sun around which our family orbited. He was charming when people watched, generous when cameras were near, and cruel only when he knew no one important was listening. Growing up, he had been the golden son who got second chances before I even received first ones. When he wrecked my father's truck at 19, my parents called it a mistake. When I won a scholarship at 20, he told everyone I only got it because people felt sorry for quiet girls. When my grandmother left me partial control of the family ranch trust, Ryan smiled at the dinner table and squeezed my shoulders so hard I had bruises the next morning. "Don't worry," he whispered. "You'll hand it back when you realize you can't handle it." I never did. That was the first time I saw real hatred behind his perfect smile. My fiancé, Daniel Brooks, knew pieces of this history, but not all of it. He knew Ryan and made jokes that sounded harmless until you heard the blade underneath. He knew my parents had a habit of calling me sensitive whenever I defended myself. What Daniel didn't know was that Ryan had called me 3 nights before the wedding and told me, "You're building a life on stolen attention." I should have told Daniel then. I didn't because some part of me still wanted to believe my brother would not cross certain lines in front of 200 guests. That was my mistake. The wedding was held at my family's ranch in Texas, the same place where Ryan and I had grown up riding horses, breaking windows, and pretending our childhood was happier than it was. The ceremony had gone beautifully, almost suspiciously so. Daniel cried during his vows. My best friend, Sophia Bennett, squeezed my hand before I walked down the aisle and whispered, "You deserve one peaceful day." I wanted to believe her. For 1 hour, then the reception began, and Ryan transformed into the version of himself I feared most, polished, calm, and too pleased with something no one else understood. He drifted between guests with a champagne flute, accepting compliments on my wedding as if he had planned it himself. When my aunt told him I looked radiant, his jaw flexed before he laughed. When my father said Daniel was a good man, Ryan looked toward the bar instead of answering. I noticed the bartender, too, an older man I did not recognize from our vendor meetings. He kept glancing at Ryan, then at me, then at the projector screen near the dance floor. That was the second warning. The first came when Sophia pulled me aside near the dessert table and said, "Why is your brother asking the videographer about the slideshow?" I turned so quickly my veil caught on a chair. Across the room, Ryan stood beside the projector setup, pointing at a laptop while the videographer looked confused. My stomach tightened. We had approved every wedding video. There was supposed to be one short montage of childhood photos, nothing more. Ryan saw me watching and lifted his glass in a private salute. I forced myself not to react. A few minutes later, Daniel was pulled away by cousins, wanting photos. Sophia went to fix a loose strap on her dress, and I ended up alone near the head table. That was when Ryan made his move. He approached my champagne glass with the casual confidence of someone who believed family history had trained me to stay quiet. His body blocked the table from most guests. His fingers dipped into his jacket pocket. The packet was small, silver, and folded tight. I saw powder vanish into the bubbles. My blood went cold, but my mind went sharper than it had ever been. I did not know what he had put in that glass. I only knew it was meant to make me weak, foolish, humiliated, or worse. He stepped away to greet our parents. I moved in, lifted my glass, and switched it with the one he had left beside his place card. A simple movement, a silent decision. No shouting, no warning. When he returned and raised his toast, he drank from the glass he thought was safe. I held water, smiled, and counted the seconds. If you were in my place, would you have confronted him immediately? Or would you have waited to see how far he planned to go? The first thing Ryan tried to ruin was not my body. It was my reputation. While the guests moved from dinner into dancing, Sophia slipped beside me with her phone pressed against her chest. Her face had gone pale in a way that made me forget the glass in Ryan's hand for half a second. "You need to see this," she said. She opened a message that had been sent to at least 12 relatives in a private family group chat I had never been invited to join. The message came from an unknown number, but the words sounded exactly like Ryan. "Ask Emma where the ranch money really went before everyone calls her the perfect bride." Attached was a screenshot of a bank transfer with my name circled in red. At first, I could not breathe. Then I looked closer. The transfer was real. But the caption was a lie. It showed money moved from the ranch trust into an emergency account 2 years earlier after a storm damaged the east barns. I had authorized repairs with my grandmother's lawyer. My father had signed the approval, and the insurance reimbursement had replaced every dollar. Ryan had taken a legitimate document, cropped out the explanation, and turned it into a weapon. Sophia's voice trembled with anger. People are asking questions. I looked toward the dance floor. 2 cousins stopped talking when I looked at them. My mother's sister whispered behind her hand. My father stared at his phone with a confusion that quickly became embarrassment. And my mother did what she always did when Ryan created a problem. She looked for a way to make it my responsibility. The old Emma might have rushed to explain herself to every person in the room. The old Emma might have cried in a restroom, rehearsing proof no one had asked Ryan to provide. But the woman standing in a wedding dress that night had just watched her brother put something into her drink. I was done begging people to believe me. I asked Lily to forward the message to herself, screenshot the number, and stay calm. "Do not confront him," I whispered. "Not yet." She blinked. "Emma, he's trying to frame you." "I know," I said. "That means he's afraid of something bigger." That was the first moment the night shifted. Fear became information. Ryan wasn't acting out because he was bored. He was building a case against me in real time. The drink was meant to make me look unstable. The fake financial leak was meant to make me look dishonest. If both happened together, he could turn my wedding into a public trial and cast himself as the concerned brother brave enough to reveal the truth. It was cruel, but it was also sloppy. He had mistaken my silence for stupidity. I moved through the reception with a smile so controlled it almost hurt. When guests touched my arm and asked if I was okay, I told them the same thing. "Enjoy the evening. Everything will make sense soon." The sentence traveled faster than panic. People became curious instead of convinced. That mattered. A revenge story is not won by shouting first. It is won by letting the liar expose the shape of his own lie. Near the bar, I saw Ryan checking his phone. His eyelids looked heavier than before, and sweat had gathered above his lip. Whatever he had put in the drink was beginning to work on him. He noticed me watching and forced a grin. "You look tense, bride." "You look thirsty," I said. His smile flickered. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me. Then the strange bartender leaned close to him and muttered something. Ryan snapped, "Just keep the file ready." File, not video, not slideshow. File. That one word mattered. I turned away before he could see my expression change. Sophia followed me toward the hallway that led to the bridal suite. "What file?" she whispered. I did not answer because a memory had just surfaced. 3 months earlier, my grandmother's lawyer had called me about missing scans from the trust archive. Nothing had been stolen, exactly. Someone had accessed documents they had no authority to view. At the time, I assumed it was a clerical error. Now, I understood. Ryan had been gathering pieces of my life long before the wedding. He had not planned a prank. He had planned a public execution of my credibility. In the bridal suite, I opened my emergency folder, the one Sophia had teased me for bringing because only you would pack legal paperwork beside lipstick. Inside were trust statements, repair invoices, insurance letters, and printed emails with timestamps. I handed Sophia half the stack. "Find Daniel," I said. "Tell him I need the videographer, the DJ, and the venue manager near the projector in 10 minutes. Sophia stared at me like she was seeing a different version of her best friend. Maybe she was. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I looked at my reflection. White dress, steady eyes, and a family name that had been used against me for too long. "I'm going to let him start the show," I said. "Then I'm going to finish it." The second sabotage came from the man behind the bar. His name tag said Kevin, but the vendor list in my bridal folder said our bartender was supposed to be a woman named Olivia Ramirez. That difference might seem small to anyone else. To me, it became the first loose thread I could pull. I found the venue manager, a sharp woman named Rachel, near the kitchen entrance and asked quietly, "Who is working the bar tonight?" Rachel frowned. "Olivia." "Why?" "Because Olivia isn't at the bar." Within 5 minutes, Rachel had checked the staff entrance log, and her face changed. The man serving drinks had arrived with a temporary badge printed from a forwarded email. The email came from Ryan's address. Suddenly, the night had evidence instead of suspicion. Rachel wanted to remove him immediately, but I stopped her. "Not in front of everyone," I said. "Ask him to help with a private inventory issue. Take him to your office. Keep him there, and turn on your security camera." She hesitated only once, glancing at my dress, then at my face. Whatever she saw made her nod. 10 minutes later, Kevin was no longer at the bar. Ryan noticed almost instantly. I watched him scan the room, irritation breaking through his polished mask. He approached the bar, looked behind it, then checked his phone 3 times. The drink was doing more to him now. His pupils looked unfocused, and he kept rubbing his forehead as if the had become too loud. That should have satisfied me, but it didn't. I did not want him hurt. I wanted the truth alive, clear, and impossible to bury. Rachel returned with news that made my hands go numb. Kevin had admitted Ryan paid him $500 to upgrade my champagne and start the wrong slideshow at exactly 9:15. He claimed he did not know what was in the packet because Ryan supplied it himself. Rachel had recorded him saying enough to prove the arrangement. She also found the real bartender, Olivia, waiting outside the service gate, furious and confused, because someone had texted her that the event was canceled. That text came from a burner number, but Kevin had screenshots of Ryan's payment app confirmation. Suddenly, my wedding was no longer a family drama. It was a coordinated attack. Daniel found me behind the floral arch, still holding the folder. His face had the calm fury of a man trying not to explode in a room full of grandparents. "Lily, tell me enough," he said. "Tell me the rest." So, I did. I told him about the drink, the fake group chat leak, the substituted bartender, the projector file, and the way Ryan had been threatening me for years under the cover of brotherly teasing. Daniel listened without interrupting. When I finished, he took both my hands. "Do you want to leave?" he asked. That question nearly broke me, because for the first time that night, someone gave me a choice instead of a role. I could have left. I could have changed out of my dress and let the reception collapse into whispers, but leaving would give Ryan exactly what he wanted. A runaway bride, a suspicious story, a family divided by rumor. I shook my head. No, I want our first dance. Daniel looked toward the barn where guests were waiting, phones buzzing with Ryan's lie. "Then we dance," he said. We walked back together. The room softened when people saw us hand in hand. The band began the song we had chosen months earlier, and for 3 minutes, I let myself feel the life Ryan had tried to steal from me. Daniel held me like I was not a scandal, not a victim, not a family problem, but his wife. Halfway through the song, he leaned close and whispered, "The videographer is ready. Rachel has the bartender's statement. Sophia is with the DJ. Your grandmother's lawyer is on speaker in the office if needed." I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because Ryan had underestimated everyone I loved. He thought my support system was decoration. He thought bridesmaids, husbands, vendors, and old lawyers existed in the background while men like him controlled the room. He was wrong. When the song ended, guests clapped. Ryan did not. He stood near the projector table gripping a chair, his face shiny with sweat. He looked angry now, but also confused, as if the night had started disobeying him. Our eyes met. For a brief second, I saw the little boy who once broke my toy horse and cried until our mother made me apologize for upsetting him. Then he disappeared behind the man who had slipped something into my glass. He mouthed 2 words at me, "Sit down." I smiled, lifted my bouquet, and mouthed back, "Go ahead." If blood is supposed to be thicker than water, why do some relatives act like poison and call it love? At 9:15, the lights dimmed. The DJ looked at me once, waiting for my signal. I gave the smallest nod. Ryan stumbled toward the microphone with the confidence of a man who believed the room still belonged to him. "I prepared something special," he announced. His voice dragged slightly on the last word, and a few guests exchanged confused looks. My mother laughed too loudly to cover it. My father frowned. Daniel stood beside me, not touching me, but close enough that I could feel his presence like armor. Behind Ryan, the projector screen turned white. A folder appeared. The truth about the bride. Gasps moved through the room before anything even played. Ryan smiled at me with an ugly triumph. "Family deserves honesty," he said, "especially before we celebrate someone who has been hiding so much." Then he clicked. The first slide showed the cropped bank transfer. The second showed a photo of me leaving my grandmother's lawyer's office. The third was a line of text. "She stole from the ranch trust." My mother made a strangled sound. My father rose halfway from his seat. Guests began whispering, and Ryan opened his arms like a preacher delivering judgment. "I didn't want to do this tonight," he lied, "but I couldn't let my sister start a marriage built on deception. That was my cue." I stepped forward before fear could decide for me. "Pause it," I said. The DJ paused the slideshow. Ryan blinked. "No, keep going." I said, "Pause it," I repeated louder. The room turned toward me. My voice did not shake, and that alone changed the energy. "Since my brother wants honesty, let's have all of it," Ryan laughed, but it came out thin. "Emma, don't embarrass yourself. You already tried." Lily walked to the projector table and inserted a flash drive. The screen changed. Now the full bank transfer appeared. Not cropped, not edited, not twisted. Beside, it was the insurance reimbursement, the contractor invoice, my father's signature, the lawyer's approval, and the email chain explaining every dollar. I heard my father whisper, "That's my signature." "Yes," I said, without looking away from Ryan, "because you approved it." My mother's face drained of color. The guests were no longer whispering about me. They were whispering about him. Ryan grabbed the microphone. "She's manipulating documents." "Then let's ask the lawyer," I said. Lily tapped the laptop, and my grandmother's lawyer, Evelyn Grant, appeared by audio through the speakers, her voice crisp and merciless. "For the record, Emma Carter did not steal from the ranch trust. She acted within her authority as co-trustee. The documents displayed by Ryan Carter were incomplete and misleading." Ryan's jaw tightened. He tried to speak, but Margaret continued. "Furthermore, my office has been investigating unauthorized access to trust records over the past 3 months. That sentence landed like a dropped glass. My father turned slowly toward Ryan. "Unauthorized access?" Ryan wiped his forehead. "This is ridiculous." "It is," I said, "but not for the reason you think." I turned to the guests, because this was no longer a private wound. 30 minutes before my brother started this slideshow, I saw him put something into my champagne. I switched our glasses. That is why he is the one sweating, shaking, and struggling to stand right now. The room erupted. My mother stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. Ryan lunged for the microphone again. Daniel moved 1 step, not aggressively, just enough to block him. Rachel entered from the side with Kevin, the fake bartender, standing behind her like a man who wished he could vanish into the floor. She held up her phone. "I have his statement recorded," she said. "He admits Mr. Hayes paid him to replace our bartender, alter the slideshow timing, and handle the drink." Ryan's mask finally cracked. He looked from Rachel to Kevin, from Kevin to me, and then to our parents. For once, charm had nowhere to land. "You don't understand," he said. "I was trying to protect the family." "From what?" I asked. "From your own fraud?" I had not planned to say it yet. The words escaped because my body recognized truth before my mind arranged it politely. Ryan went still. So did my father. That stillness told me I had found the center. Sophia clicked again. The screen changed, and this time the folder title was not his. It was mine. What Ryan didn't want found. I heard someone in the back whisper, "Oh my God." Ryan's eyes widened. "Turn that off," he said. "No," I replied. "You wanted a show to remember." The first document in my folder was not dramatic. It was a loan notice. Plain white background, small black text, and Ryan's signature at the bottom. But beneath the signature was another name. My father's. The problem was that my father had not signed it. I knew because he had been in the hospital recovering from surgery the week that document was dated. The second file showed a second loan. The third showed a line of credit opened against ranch equipment. The fourth showed a forged authorization requesting early liquidation of a trust investment my grandmother had protected specifically from Ryan. Each document was worse than the last. Not because the numbers were enormous at first, but because the pattern was so clear. Small lies had become bigger lies. Temporary cover-ups had become theft. By the time the final page appeared, the room was silent enough to hear Ryan breathing. He had used my father's name, my mother's maiden name, and old family business accounts to borrow money he could not repay. Then, when Evelyn Grant's office began asking questions, he looked for someone to blame. Me. The sister with partial trust authority. The sister whose wedding would gather every witness he needed. The sister he could make look unstable with a tampered drink, dishonest with cropped documents, and dramatic with a public meltdown. His jealousy had not been random. It had become strategy. He didn't just hate that I had attention. He needed me disgraced so no one would believe me when the missing money surfaced. My father's voice broke first. "Ryan," he said, "tell me this is fake." Ryan looked at him with tears in his eyes, but even then, the tears felt like tools. "Dad, I was going to fix it." My mother covered her mouth. "Fix what?" "The investment failed," he snapped, suddenly angry at being cornered. "I had a chance to double it. I was going to put everything back before anyone knew." "You forged my name?" "Wah," my father said. Ryan pointed at me. "Because she took everything. Grandma gave her power over the ranch like I was nothing. Every family dinner became about Emma's responsibility, Emma's maturity, Emma's perfect future. I was the son. I was supposed to inherit the ranch. There it was. Not love. Not protection. Ownership." He looked at me then, and for the first time all night, he stopped pretending. "You were always in the way." The sentence should have destroyed me. Maybe years earlier it would have. But standing there in my wedding dress, beside the man I had married, surrounded by people finally seeing the truth without my begging, I felt something colder and cleaner than pain. I felt free. "You didn't lose the ranch because of me," I said. "You lost trust because you treated family like property." He laughed bitterly, swaying slightly. "You think they'll choose you after this? You humiliated the family in front of everyone." My father stepped forward. "No, you did." My mother started crying, but not in the way she used to cry when she wanted me to soften. These tears looked stunned, frightened, and ashamed. "Why would you put something in her drink?" she asked him. Ryan's face twisted. "It wasn't supposed to hurt her." "Then what was it supposed to do?" I asked. He did not answer. Kevin did. He said it would make her dizzy and emotional. The fake bartender muttered. He said she'd start crying during the slideshow, and everyone would believe the documents because she'd look guilty. The horror in the room deepened. Daniel turned away for 1 second, jaw tight, then looked back with control that made me love him even more. Evelyn Grant's voice came again through the speakers. "Rachel, if law enforcement is present or nearby, I recommend preserving all recordings, payment confirmations, and remaining contents from the glassware." Rachel nodded. "Already done." Ryan panicked. "You called the cops?" "Venue security called them when Kevin admitted drink tampering," Rachel said. "They're at the gate." That was when Ryan tried to run. Not far. 2 steps toward the side exit, then his body betrayed him, stumbling from the very thing he had intended for me. Daniel did not chase him. My father did not chase him. Security did. They caught him by the door before he fell into a table. The sight should have felt satisfying. Instead, it felt tragic in the way rotten beams are tragic when a house finally collapses. Everyone acts shocked, but the damage had been spreading for years. As security held him upright, Ryan looked at our parents. "You're going to let them do this to me?" My father's voice was rough. "No, son, you did this to yourself." My mother lowered her hand from her mouth, and we helped by excusing you. That confession hit me harder than I expected. I had wanted her to see him. I had forgotten that meant seeing herself, too. She turned to me, trembling. Emma. I shook my head once. Not cruelly, not dramatically, just enough to say, not now. Because this night was not going to become another scene where my pain made everyone else seek comfort. The sheriff's deputies entered quietly through the side doors. Guests moved aside. Ryan's face crumpled as he realized no joke, no charm, no family title could stop what came next. They did not drag him out like a movie villain. They asked questions, collected evidence, and escorted him away for a formal statement. That was somehow worse for him. No grand exit, no final speech. Just consequences. After Ryan was escorted out, the barn did not return to celebration right away. It became something stranger, a room full of people waking from a story they had believed too easily. Some guests avoided my eyes. Others looked at me with pity, which I hated more than suspicion. My father sat down like his bones had aged 10 years. My mother stared at the empty doorway. I stood beside the projector screen, my dress still perfect from far away, my hands still cold up close. Daniel took the microphone first. He did not make a speech about forgiveness or family healing. He simply said, "My wife and I need 5 minutes." My wife, 2 words, and the room remembered why we were there. Lily guided me into the bridal suite, and the moment the door closed, I finally shook. Not sobbing, not collapsing, just shaking from the effort of staying composed while my brother tried to turn my wedding into a trap. Daniel wrapped his arms around me, and I pressed my face against his jacket. "I'm sorry." I whispered. "For what?" he asked. "This was supposed to be your day, too." He looked at me. "It still is. He doesn't get to own the story because he tried to ruin it." Lily wiped her eyes angrily. For the record, that was terrifying and iconic. I laughed then, one sharp broken laugh that became real. Rachel knocked on the door and said the deputies had taken Kevin's statement and collected both glasses. Evelyn Grant had sent the trust documents to my parents and the authorities. The false messages had been screenshotted by enough relatives to trace the burner account. The revenge was not that Ryan looked foolish. It was that every system he tried to manipulate now had a record of him touching it. His lies had receipts. His threats had witnesses. His surprise had become evidence. When we returned to the reception, no one clapped. They just watched. I walked to the microphone, not because I owed anyone an explanation, but because I owed myself the final word. "I know this isn't the wedding reception any of us expected," I said. "A few minutes ago, my brother tried to convince you I was dishonest, unstable, and unworthy of trust. Some of you believed him quickly. Some of you hesitated. A few of you protected me before you had the whole story. I will remember both." Several people lowered their heads. I looked at my parents. For years, I was told to keep peace by staying quiet. Tonight proved silence doesn't create peace. It creates room for the loudest liar. My mother cried again. My father covered her hand, but his eyes stayed on me. "I am not asking anyone to hate my brother," I continued. "I am also not asking anyone to excuse him. Love without accountability is just permission to hurt people twice." The room stayed silent, but this silence was different. It had weight. Maybe shame. Daniel stepped beside me, and I turned toward him. I married a man tonight who asked if I wanted to leave, not because he was afraid, but because he cared more about my choice than a perfect party. Daniel's eyes softened. "So, here is my choice," I said. "We are cutting the cake. We are having our dance. We are finishing this wedding. Not because nothing happened, but because I refuse to let the worst person in the room decide how this night ends." That was the first time the guests clapped. Not wildly, not like everything was fine, but steadily, like people choosing the right side. The cake was brought out. My father walked toward me with a folded envelope. "This was supposed to wait until tomorrow," he said. "Your grandmother's attorney gave it to me months ago. She said I'd know when it mattered." I opened it with unsteady fingers. Inside was a handwritten note from my grandmother and an amendment summary from the trust. My grandmother had known Ryan was pressuring me. She had documented concerns about his debts and restricted his access years earlier. She had also written one sentence that made my throat close. "Emma does not need the family to give her strength. She needs the family to stop punishing her for having it." My father read it over my shoulder and broke. Not loudly, not theatrically. He bowed his head and cried like a man finally understanding the cost of his favoritism. "I failed you," he said. My mother stepped forward, but stopped when I lifted my hand. "I'm not ready," I said. Her face crumpled, but she nodded. That nod was small, but it was the first respectful thing she had given me all night. The rest of the reception was not perfect. Perfect had been poisoned before the toast, but it became honest. Guests apologized quietly. Sophia gave a maid of honor speech that made half the room laugh and cry. Daniel and I cut the cake while my cousins guarded the projector table like soldiers. Near midnight, my father announced Ryan would be removed from all ranch financial authority pending legal review, and anyone spreading the false accusation would receive full documentation correcting it. That public correction mattered more than any hug. The next morning, Ryan's attorney called Evelyn Grant. By then, the venue had video, the bartender's statement, the payment confirmation, and a copied slideshow file with metadata. Ryan did not go to prison that night, and I pretend the legal process wrapped up like a movie. Real consequences take paperwork, time, and people brave enough not to back down. But he lost what he valued most immediately: control. He lost the family's automatic belief. He lost access to the accounts he abused. He lost the golden sun shield that had protected him for decades. And he lost me. Completely. Months later, people still asked whether I forgave him. I always gave the same answer. Forgiveness is not the same as handing someone another glass. Daniel and I kept one wedding photo framed in our living room. Not the posed one under the arch. Not the cake-cutting one. The one Sophia took after the final dance, when my makeup was faded, Daniel's tie was loose, and I was laughing like the night had not beaten me. Because it hadn't. Ryan wanted my wedding remembered as the day I was exposed. Instead, it became the day everyone finally saw him clearly. And if you've ever had a family member smile in public while hurting you in private, remember this. You don't have to scream to be strong. Sometimes you switch the glass, save the proof, tell the truth, and let consequences walk through the door. So tell me in the comments, would you have exposed him in front of everyone or handled it quietly after the wedding? Thank you for supporting our channel and watching this video until the end. Please remember that this story is completely fictional and made only for dramatic, educational, and entertainment purposes. We hope it reminds the viewers that rejection, humiliation, or betrayal should never be the final definition of who you are, because your next chapter can still be stronger, brighter, and more peaceful than anything they expected. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. I truly appreciate your comments, feedback, and thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you again in the next stories.